No, you're not seeing things here, ladies and gentlemen. We are here in prime time on the brightest lights, the biggest stage, and we're about to unleash a pit bull like you've never seen before. A man that is one of the true all-time greats in our sport, and a man that has truly traveled up and down the world. You think about places that this man has made his legacy in. I don't know. How about New Zealand? How about Australia? How about Japan? How about once upon a time the WWF and maybe this little company that used to be Tri-State Wrestling, then it was Eastern Championship Wrestling, and then it eventually became Extreme Championship Wrestling. And this man certainly was at the forefront of it. You think about his wars with the likes of Public Enemy. You think about his wars with Raven. You think about certainly the Sandman. The Sandman definitely owes our guest, let's just say something, not a kendo stick. And how about Shane Douglas, who, oh, by the way, our guest teamed with in the ring this past weekend? Yeah, we'll talk about that, but we'll most certainly talk about a book that I'm very excited about, which I just purchased my copy, which is, only number 26 right now in all of Amazon's wrestling books out there. It's ahead of books, I don't know, written by some guy, Chris Jericho, who shares something in common with our guest and a slew of other people that you've seen. But this man has a story and a legacy that's like no other. We're going to get into that. We're going to certainly get into what our guest is up to now, plus who knows whatever else. But, since our guest has done so many different of these podcasts, and I know this guy and that guy interviews him, I do things here a little different because I'm sure that our guest now knows this because I interviewed actually a man that our guest wrestled. And this guy that's apparently supposed to be wrestling in AEW right now, this man beast, this war machine, another former television champion, the last ECW real world champion, Rhino. I gave him this introduction, which he wanted to run through a wall after hearing from. And I know since our guest is a pit bull and he is the number one pit bull, I must certainly have to give him that introduction because we are here in prime time on the brightest lights, the biggest stage, the platform, and most certainly all music and wrestling matters. And as I say time and time again, in the famous words of Def Leppard frontman Joe Elliott, let's get rocked, baby, and let's introduce one of the all-time greats in this sport, one of the all-time greatest tag teams that our guest was one half of those ECW tag team champions of, a former ECW television champion, 3PW heavyweight champion, and a man that certainly made his career around the world. It is my great honor to introduce him, and let's get this show on the road in style on Sportzwire Radio, the number one global radio station. So with without further ado, here on the Sport Report, number one global sports show, the one and only Pitbull Gary Wolf. My friend, how are we doing?
How you doing, brother? Can you hear me all right? I think you broke my phone.
Well, I've heard that a few different times. My mother's certainly a singer in her own right, had to put up with this for about 5 years, and now she's just a fan. But that's a different time for a different conversation. It is an absolute honor to have you here, sir. And certainly I want to get into what the reason you're really here right now is you've got a book, and it's kind of fascinating to me that after all this time now, you decided to write a book, and I want to talk about it because it is certainly something that I am very excited to read here coming up later this week. So for those that are listening and watching here in prime time on the brightest lights, the biggest stage, the platform, you, Mr. Pitbull Gary Wolf, most certainly helped build Sportswire Radio. Talk about your brand new book that has just come out, The Pitbull Unleashed, the Gary Wolf story.
Could you do me a favor and raise your volume a little bit, man?
It is as loud as I can go. It is as loud as
Okay.
I can go.
I don't know why, but it went low on me, so it's like hard to hear you. Sorry.
Okay, I'm gonna try it again. Maybe I'll pause it and then we'll try to do it again. Okay, so you have a book, The Pitbull Unleashed. Let's talk
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah, this is actually here it is right here, brother.
A book I'm looking forward to reading, no question.
Yeah, the back part. That was with me and my partner, and Larry Sharp was our
Mm-hmm.
manager. Pretty boy Larry Sharp.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I
And
have
I
I
was
have it right here. Yeah, I actually put the link here. I have to share the screen, so I put
yeah,
that up there. Yep, no question.
cool. And yeah, I always thought about doing a book, and then somebody just approached me and suggested I do one, and I really, I said, okay, I'll do it. And we knocked it out pretty quick.
Why now? Why now that you decided to write this book? You've had such an amazing career, such an amazing journey, but why now do you think the time is right?
Because nobody really knows like everything about the pit bulls and how, like me and Anthony. People think, oh, you weren't in WWF. Yeah, we were. And, you know what I mean? People think, we didn't have a chance to go there. And we turned it down and went to Japan. You know what I mean? And a lot of people don't know what me and Anthony went through, where we were from. And, we got to wrestle in 3 different territories. You know what I'm saying? Lawler's territory, Jeff Jarrett's territory, and then Paul Jones and George Scott's territory, which was actually a, something to get you ready for WWF. You know what I mean? Because we were wrestling 6 nights a week there.
And you wrestled guys like the Nasty Boys who went to WWF right after you wrestled them. You wrestled all
Oh,
these.
we were supposed to be there way before the Nasty Boys were there, because we were already in North Carolina working, getting ready with Vince Torelli, who was Ken Shamrock, and
Tatanka, right?
Chris
You had Tatanka.
Chavis, who was Katanka. So, we were getting them ready at the same time, but we were working guys like, we made it in the stud stable, the Pitbulls.
Yep.
We were so good that we were able to turn the Nasty Boys baby face and we became heels. That's how cool that. And it took us a couple of months because George Scott wouldn't let us do a promo, and we begged them and begged them, can we please do a heel promo? I beg you. Finally, he's like, okay, bitching, about the video costing money and all this shit. So I said, just let us do one. We'll just do one. And we cut the promo, and he just like his jaw was on the ground. Even Paul Jones was just shaking his head, and he threw. I remember he threw the book down, and he was like, "I got to change 6 months of writing. I have to totally change now because you guys are natural heels,
Sure.
and you're gonna be heels." So the Nasty Boys were just coming in, and when they came in, they were thinking they're going to be the heels, and no, it didn't happen that way. People were very surprised, but we were lucky. Like I said, our first tour ever was between '88 and '89. That's when I started. We went to New Zealand and wrestled the British Bulldogs. And that right there gave us pretty much that was our test. Our first night there was a 45-minute match, and I remember Larry Sharp went across the room to get the finish.
Yeah.
Come back, of course, and he just came back shaking his head. You know what I mean? We're like, what the hell are you shaking your head for? What's the finish? He's like, there is no finish. They want to do 45 minutes, and they're going to call it out there. So what it was a test to see if we could hang or not.
Sure.
Because we were only like 19, 20 years old. We were young. And
And they were the British Bulldogs who had, been tag team champions in WWF, WrestleMania. I mean, you got them at the pinnacle of their career. So to go out there and do what you guys did, that's like trial by fire, more or less.
dude, all I know is we passed the test. The next day I got up and went across the hall thinking it was Larry's room, but it was the Bulldogs room.
Yeah.
And they were already in there drinking a VO and getting drunk, you know what I'm saying? And they just said, because I started backing out the room. You know what I mean? Because I was
Yeah.
young. I was like, oh shit, I'm in the wrong room. And he's like, nah, man, get your ass in here. And Dynamite put his arm around me and said, you guys fucking worked your ass off last night. You drink with us today. He goes, the rest of the tour is going to be a fucking breeze. You know, you got to understand they're the Bulldogs, we're the pit bulls. You know,
Yeah.
they, in their minds, we're these fucking young guys think they're taking our gimmick. You know, that's what they would, so
What?
normally that's what somebody would think, So I understood where they were coming from. And we were in front of 55,000 people. I just remember looking at Anthony and saying, look, it took us 33 hours to get here. I ain't going to not go out there. We're going to go out there and fuck these guys up or do the best we can. You know what I'm saying? And have a good match. Let's just go do it.
Yeah.
And that's what we did. And they respected us for it. And I'm telling you, the rest of the 2 weeks was like I was studying, it was learning. I'm just learning from these guys, man. They're working 300 something days a year. I'm still in wrestling school. You see what I'm saying? And
That's
I
why I
was
said
looking
trial
at
by fire. It was almost like you went there and you're learning. That's the greatest way to learn. It's like a musician. I get all these bands that come on here, and they would tell me all the time that the way that they learned was they would go out and tour. They would have to go out, and they learned to play note by note. And it's almost like the same thing what you guys did. You and obviously your tag team partner, and you did that with the British Bulldogs. And I'm sure we'll see more of that in the book. And what a fascinating journey that you've had, which I'm sure we'll get into here in a few minutes. But is there one or two moments in the book that stood out most for you that you wrote that maybe our listeners and those that are going to get the book should really be excited most to read, maybe?
uh, there's a lot of stuff. I mean, you got to remember, I've seen a lot of death,
You were in the Tokyo Dome with 65,000 people, New Zealand. I mean, you
man.
wrestled Ted DiBiase. I mean, you were in there with Terry Funk. I mean, you had the Halo incident. I mean, you've done a lot. I mean, I really, in kind of looking at your career, and we were talking about this off the air. I grew up in Brooklyn, New York, so I remember ECW as a little kid. I remember my parents not allowing me to stay up to watch ECW, but a few years later, I got a chance to watch some of your footage on VHS, and I remember like your career is to me one of the most fascinating careers because you've been a territory guy. You had major success. Japan, you had major success. You mentioned New Zealand, Australia, you were there for a year. And then obviously this little company, ECW, which you were there when it wasn't even ECW. You started out as Tri-State Championship Wrestling. I mean, just really a fascinating journey that you had more or less.
Yeah, it's because I was just luck. We were lucky. We went back to New Zealand 5 more times. I mean, the other time was against the Guerrero brothers, which was Eddie Guerrero's dad and Rey Mysterio's dad.
Wow.
Another time we went back against the sheep herders, they were
The
called, which
Bushwhackers.
are the
Yeah, of course.
bushwhackers.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're over in New Zealand. That's where they're from.
Yep.
So being a heel, going down there, and uh, just going to Australia. I lived in Australia for 11 months, almost a year, and we were working 4 nights a week. I
Wow.
mean, I lived in Puerto Rico. We had the belts there too. Every federation, even the NWA, we were the U.S. heavyweight champions, and Missy Hyatt was our manager. So we were pretty successful every single place we were. That's one thing that uh, I definitely it's definitely you know down in the records that we had titles everywhere we went.
Yeah,
No
it's a really
bullshit.
fascinating career that you've had because you were in so many different places and had success. It was almost chronologically looking at your career from, 88, 89 to pretty much the end of the first run that you kind of had. It's really, I mean, it's really such a fascinating career that you had. And I mean, Todd Gordon, how influential was he in your career?
Unbelievable. I mean, he's the one that brought us into TWA, and he knew, not only were we going working for TWA, we just got offered to go to Japan. You know what I mean? So it's like before we even started working, well, we were working for Vince McMahon while we were going to school. And when he would be in the area, the tri state area, which is funny, uh, we would go. That's like New York,
Yep.
Philadelphia, New
New
Jersey.
Jersey, yeah.
We would go hit them shows and we would work and he would pay us. And we didn't, we did it for experience. And then he put us on the tours. Like I remember one tour, it was me and my partner against Brutus Beefcake and Jimmy Snuka for 2 weeks, and we were in
Wow.
Austria, yeah, in Germany. So to us, I mean, we were not only learning the business, but we were learning the business by wrestling guys that were better than us and been in the business longer than us, and the guys from the '80s. You know what I'm saying? Who, shit, man, that was our dream is being in that locker room. And next thing you know, we're there. I'm playing cards with Andre the Giant, chilling out, man. Yeah, yeah. He
Wow.
was real. Yeah, because I ran. We ended up bumping into each other, and because I was telling him a story that my dad took me to a wrestling show when I was a kid, and I went. Yeah, I shook his hand, and his hand actually covered my whole arm. It disappeared. That's how big his hands
Oh
are.
my God. Wow.
Yeah, and he
Wow.
started laughing, and then he asked me, "Do you play poker?" I said, "Poker." I said, "My grandpa invented the poker machine, the first poker machine ever made. You put a dime in it, and the cards would spin." And he started laughing, so he's like, come with me." So I went with him in his dressing room, and he started playing poker cards with him and drinking
Wow.
wine.
Oh
Ah,
my
it was
God.
cool as hell, man. And I kept hearing boss, boss. So I thought that was Vince McMahon walking around. But no, I didn't realize they called him the boss. You know what I mean? So they kept looking in the room and going, "You ready, boss? Like, you ready to wrestle?" And he's just like, "No, no." Wasn't drunk enough. He would drink like 3 bottles of wine before he would go out. I mean,
Wow. Wow.
it was crazy because you got to remember in the '80s they didn't even have a drug policy there yet. Like they weren't even getting tested.
It was sex, drugs, and rock and roll pretty much almost in that
It
era,
was, dude. I was walking around by myself one day in a stadium, and I seen this bus, and it said Hulk Hogan on the bus, and I'm like, holy shit! And I turned around because I'm checking out. I never been in a stadium before ever. I mean, to watch a concert, but not
Yeah.
perform in one.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So I got to check this out when it's empty. And he comes off the bus and he's like, "What the fuck are you doing?" Like he thought I was some young kid like that stuck in the building. I said, "No, I go to the Monster Factory." I said, "I'm at, I'm just coming in to work for the weekend." He's like, "Oh, okay, cool, 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 cool." Next thing you know, he's like, "So you're going to be a wrestler?" I said, "Yes, sir." And I'm like, "Nice to meet you. My name's Gary Wolf, Pitbull." And he goes, "I'm Terry Bolleo, Hulk Hogan." That's how we're supposed to do it. I mean,
Wow.
as soon as I walked in that locker room, just like this past weekend, we had the TWA one and
Yes.
done show. As soon as I walked in that locker room, I shake everybody's hand because that's what you do. You know what I'm saying? And then you go up to the main event and you say thank you. Thanks for the house. And that's what
I
you
have a
do. That's
background
something
in. It's
that's
funny you
missing
said
in
that.
the business today.
Yeah, it's funny you said that as we're here with the legendary Pitbull Gary Wolf, who you can now add the title author to. Of course, he's got a brand new book that is called The Pitbull Unleashed, the Gary Wolf Story. And I have bought a copy. I hope you buy one also. It's on Amazon right now. And it's, get this, number 26 of the top wrestling books around. So it's definitely moving the charts, and
Just
we're going
came
to move.
out May 3rd.
And already number 26 on the charts, and I think it's going to go even higher after this interview airs. And my name is the Reverend Tom Brice, your voice figuratively and literally, where all music and wrestling matters. I'm hearing you say some of those things about going up to everybody and saying, oh, I have a background in politics. And that's kind of the same thing in politics. You shake hands, you introduce yourself. It doesn't matter who it is, doesn't matter who your constituency is.
Make eye contact.
That's it. That's how I was taught, from when I got into that as a kid. Basically, you shake everybody's hand. You basically anything you can do, pass out your business card, and that's what I've lived by. And that's kind of how I've gotten the opportunity to speak with gentlemen like yourself. And being in the ring today, how has the wrestling business changed from when, let's say, 35 years ago, when you talked about those days in North Carolina and obviously the WWF, and how have things changed today from 35 years ago?
Well, first of all, I'm a lot older.
Well, you still look great. I mean, listen, I had, a man you wrestled, Rhino, who still looks almost the same. So listen, you look great.
Yeah, we always we have to keep it in shape. We got to keep going to the gym. Going to the gym, staying in the shape. That's probably why we're still. I'm not gonna lie. I seen guys from TWA that, man, like they're in their like early 60s. I'm 58, and they just don't do anything. And you can see the difference to the guys that do stuff to
Yeah.
stay in shape compared to the ones that don't, and it's a big difference. And the business is different by the kids today are more interested in doing these high flippy high spots. I don't see enough selling. You know what I'm saying? Like, I like to see a story being told from beginning to end. Have a story in there. Psychology is very important in wrestling. It takes between 5 and 7 years to get that down.
Sure.
So a lot of people, Vince McMahon told me right to my face, it takes 7 years to learn psychology. Unless you're smarter and you pick it up quicker. You know what I'm saying? But that's what he told me. I'm not gonna lie to you. He's honest. I'm not between you and me. Some people it takes longer than the 7 years.
Sure.
Well,
Well, there's a term in music that they use. They get a lot of musicians on it, and it's called KISS, meaning keep it simple, stupid. And I always think that term, whether it's in wrestling, whether it's in music or any form of, yes, I actually interviewed a band that played with KISS, which is a Great White. So what a small world. And yes, I have a Guns N' Roses story or two, which maybe we'll get into on the air. But yes, that's certainly a thing. But it really, what it is, it's basically, listen, don't try to do anything like somebody else. Just try to go out there and you want to have the best match possible and be safe out there. Work with your opponent. And I think that you certainly know a lot about that. You've obviously had your own wrestling school. And I'm curious, in the book, and ECW has obviously been something that people talk about to this day. Even though ECW, it's 24 years since ECW shut down its doors. To me, I kind of equate ECW kind of like sex, drugs, and rock and roll. I think about the Dirt Motley Crue's book, and I'm sure you're going to talk a lot about that here in this book. And why do you think that ECW, people still talk about it as almost as if it was just yesterday? Why do you think ECW has stood the test of time with the wrestling fans?
Because we changed the wrestling business. We brought the Attitude Era to WWE, and that changed the whole. With Steve Austin and The Rock. That just made everything go crazy. You got Shawn Michaels being a heel. Everybody breaking tables. We're the ones that started, using tables, ladders, and chairs. Oh my! We were doing that. And to us, our crowd, our audience loved it. At one time, our fans would bring weapons to the building. Like, they could come in the building with a frying pan in their
Like
hand.
a BYOB.
Yeah, hand it right to me, man. I'm going to smash it right on like Rocco Rock's head. You know what I'm saying? And that's what was different, because being a wrestler, you always want to get the fans involved somehow. You know what I mean? Because I look at it like this: they work 40 days, 40 hours in a week. You know what I mean? They're tired. They want to go somewhere and get entertained.
Sure.
Tell
Sure.
me to go fuck myself and not worry about nothing going to happen to them. You know what I'm saying? You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And it's true, you know, and I tell them, you know, I've had guys take off their fake legs, amputees, and hand it to me and let me hit my opponent with it. You know what I'm saying? So that's how crazy the fans are. The fans are like a cult, you know. And what Pat,
ECW was that. Yeah, it was
it's
kind
like
of
a
like.
cult following. And what's happening is our fans are now turning on their kids onto us as well, and that's what's getting us over even more. You know, because I still go to signings all the time. You know, and I wrestle.
Yeah, I
I'm
saw
still a
you did
wrestler.
one a few months ago. I seen you've done. You're out there almost more than you've ever been. It's so fascinating to me. It's almost like the rock world. I get these bands that come on and they're playing in front of more people than they did almost in the heyday. It's kind of like that with ECW. You guys are just people just love talking about you guys. And I remember, like I said, growing up, I grew up right where you guys were, the Elks Lodge. We were talking about this off the air, the Hammerstein Ballroom. I, as a kid, remember the posters being up in the street. I remember the commercials and everything about ECW. And I think a lot of people like me, especially, you know, you're a Jersey guy, I'm a Brooklyn guy. I think a lot of people from this area, especially, still identify with ECW. And I think that's why you're still out there in the ring. And I'm sure in the Pitbull Unleashed, the Gary Wolf story, we're going to see a lot of ECW stories, I have no doubt.
Oh yeah, it's crazy. I mean, you got to remember back then, steroids were legal. They weren't even illegal.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll give you an example. I did an interview with somebody, and the first question he asked me is, "Hey, did you ever give Hulk Hogan steroids?" I'm like, "Yeah, I gave him testosterone." Wait, let me tell you, Ron Simmons, I remember came up to me. I was like 20 years old. He's like, "Look at this fucking bottle." And I'm like, this is when Vince was, you know, sitting at the table with the doctor, and he would hand it out. You know, it was legal. All a doctor had to do is write out a prescription for testosterone or whatever you wanted, and you can get it. But what would Vince knew what he was paying these guys, so he would take advantage of that. So I'll give you an example. Like Ron Simmons says, I paid $200 for this bottle of test. I'm like, dude, I get that for you for $50. It's real. I mean, why would you know? He knows what you're making is money wise, so that's why he's hitting you for $200. So
Yeah.
that's what it was. It was crazy, dude. I remember we got pulled over once going up there to Niagara Falls for work, and we had
Okay.
a bag full of it. And the police pulled us over and searched the car, and it was like I think it was a Thursday night because we had to be there. We had to wrestle Friday and Saturday, so we were going a day early. And they locked up my partner and they locked up Hot Body, not for steroids. Number one, we were doing like 100, like 98 miles an hour. We were speeding. We were only 20 miles away from Niagara Falls. We wanted to get there, and it was an 8-hour drive. At that, you know, at that point, you know, we're paying our dues. And I remember they locked up Anthony and they locked up Hot Body. They couldn't lock me up. They had nothing on me. They locked them up because they had syringes. Back in the day, having a syringe was illegal, believe it or not. You
Wow.
know, and yeah, that was weird. So they blocked them up, and so I had to go sleep in the car and get up the next day when they went in front of the judge, and I had to get their $500 from their wives and girlfriend so they could get bailed out. And I bailed them out Friday. We went right back. We got to the building that afternoon before 2 o'clock, and we were only 20 miles out. And
Okay.
we didn't say nothing to nobody. Nobody knew we even got arrested. Nobody knew nothing. We kept our mouth shut. Vince didn't find out, and nobody knew nothing. You know. And then Anthony and Johnny had to go back up there about a month and a half later, and they gave them all the juice back, the whole bag, because it's
Wow.
it's legal. So they gave them all that back, and they came back to Philadelphia and New Jersey with it. It was a
Wow.
trip. Yeah, it was a trip, man.
That's
You know,
crazy. That's
that's
just
just one story, man. We were.
Oh man,
It's
I tell you what, if you are listening to this right now, you most certainly have to go on Amazon. It's so simple. I'm going to keep putting the link up here throughout the next 20 or 30 minutes. It is the Pitbull Unleashed, the Gary Wolf story. I can't wait to read it. I love to read. I used to be in a book club once upon a time. Now I just do this, and he's going to certainly have many more stories like this, Gary Wolf, and you have to go out there and read it. We are so honored to have him on here. And if you're here, like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Also, hit a sub button for us if you like. I'm almost at 1,500 subscribers. Also, like the video. Tell your friends. Gary Wolf is here with us. No, you're not seeing things. He is really here. My name is the Reverend Tom Brice, your voice, figuratively and literally, we're all music and wrestling matters. I have to ask you this question before I present you something, because I actually have a gift for you. Because usually you do these podcasts and people, they you take your time out of your day, but I got something special for you. But I get a lot of different wrestlers that come on here, a lot of independent wrestlers, a lot of up and coming wrestlers. And do you have any advice for anybody that's breaking into wrestling?
be in shape. Get in shape. Make sure you're in. Look the part. You know what I'm saying? If you're going to be a wrestler, look like a wrestler. That's all I gotta say.
Okay, well, you know what? I think that's a good thing. I get some of these guys on in rock, and they're like 70 years old, and they're still killing it. Doug Pinnick is 75 and just played with Tool, so I think that's a good advice. We were talking about this off the air. I obviously interviewed a man that you wrestled. What a small world the wrestling world is, and that is the man beast, the War Machine Rhino. And what were your memories of wrestling Rhino back in ECW?
It was. I enjoyed it. I always put it this way. I learned something. You know what I mean? I always learn something from it. Anytime I wrestle somebody, you should learn something. You know what I mean? So working with him, I learned you could trust somebody, especially with legs that big. You know what I'm saying? After I broke my neck, I let him DDT me off the apron through a table to the floor.
I do remember that, actually. I do remember
Yes,
watching
I
that.
did. I let him nail me with that baby in Chicago, man. And the crowd was there, but I trusted him. I knew he would take care of me. You know what I'm saying? He's one of them guys that you lay it in, he's gonna lay it in back. I mean, I don't know if you've seen clips of our match. I mean,
I did. No, yes, I actually I have seen the match because you were coming on, and I actually wound up watching it again. I remember it back in the day, but I wound up watching it on YouTube and seeing what the match was. And yeah, it was you were off the broken neck, and you were back in ECW for a little bit of a stint, and he had just sort of started to make his name. And yeah, you guys had quite a match.
yeah, he was actually, honestly, he was taking my spot. The Pitbull was leaving, the Rhino was coming in. That's what was happening. I, at the time, was thinking, my tag team partner wasn't wrestling at the time. He moved to Connecticut, and he was dealing with what problems he was dealing with. You know what I mean? And I was thinking, Rhino and I tagging up would be pretty good. I
That
thought.
would have been wild. I mean, that would have been
Cost the
something. Yeah.
animals or something, or just leave the Pitbull Rhino the animals. You know what I mean? It would have been good.
Yeah,
Uh,
that would have been different. Yeah, that would have definitely been something else. And but
yeah,
you did
but I
wrestle.
knew it was my time to go. It was that time. I could tell Paul was, and WCW contacted us anyway. So, what are you gonna do?
Hey, listen, you know what? The grass is greener on the other side sometimes. Do you have any regrets in your career?
I should have worked with Vince. I should have did Vince first and went to Japan, because I would have been in that era where I could work the Heart Foundation all the time. I could have worked the.
The Rockers, you would have had them. You would have
I
had
mean,
probably
even though I already did do that, it was just I should have got a couple WrestleManias underneath my belt. You know what I'm saying? That's what I regret. You know. because that would actually make my value go up. Put it that
Well, I mean, listen, hindsight's 2020, but you still had an amazing career nevertheless. What did it mean to you to win the ECW television championship?
way. That was an honor. At first, I'm not going to lie to you. I told Paul Heyman I didn't want the belt.
That's wow. Okay, you're like the first of anybody to say no to something, but
He looked at me like I was nuts. You know what I mean? I just like say I was actually up in New York cutting promos.
Okay.
He didn't even know if I could cut a promo. Like he never like we wouldn't do promos after the shows at that time. They weren't doing promos at the shows. They were doing them up in New York in a studio at one of the guys' houses that were one of the that were big camera crew guys.
Okay.
So they were in their basement and they would do all the editing there, and that's where So they had this office, and he goes, "We're gonna be cut promos here, so I want to cut a promo with you going against JT Smith." I was already back in ECW for a while by myself. My partner was still in Germany. See, I got injured in Japan. I had to get knee surgery, so I got better. And I'm sitting home and I see ECW on TV at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, that was. I remember. I remember it being on at like 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. Yeah,
So
I
I get
remember it
on the
very
phone
well.
and I get on the phone and I call Todd Gordon. I say, "Yo, what's up? Like, what are you guys doing on TV? When'd you get on TV?" He's like, "Oh, we just started on TV a little while ago, and I just got rid of Doug. Eddie Gilbert was
Yep.
leaving, and Paul Heyman's coming in. And what are you doing?" I said, "Well, I just rehabbed my knee." He goes, "Well, where's Anthony?" I said, "Anthony's in Germany right now doing a tour." I said, "So I'm not going to let him lose money because I got hurt. So he said, "Come into the arena." So I went to the arena. I showed up. Paul Heyman saw me, said, "Get dressed." And I got dressed. And I just remember he kept saying, "Come back every weekend, come back every weekend, come back every weekend." And I would just make sure I showed up bigger and bigger and bigger. Before you know it, I was the biggest motherfucker in that locker room. Nobody could touch me, man. I was my traps were like up to my ears, man. It was crazy.
And which that
You know what I
saved
mean?
your life. I mean, when you had the neck injury, if it wasn't for that, I mean, I wouldn't be talking to you right now. You wouldn't have wrote this book, which I just bought.
If it wasn't for my traps, I would have been dead. I would have died. I would have been paralyzed at least. I mean, I fucking heard it go, but it crack. I heard it break, but I didn't think. In my mind, if you break your neck, you die. So I remember just rolling over, and I couldn't see nothing but white, so I knew I was knocked out. But I was able to wiggle my toes and my feet and my hands, and that's when I realized, okay, I can move my hands and my toes. So I just had to come to, and then I started able to see, and I just rolled out real slow, and I thought I jammed my neck because I've never done that before. But I took the move like a DDT, and I should have took it like a face bump, turning my face to the side
Oh,
and
I'm
landing on
turning
my
my
chin.
face just seeing that, Mr. Wolf. I mean,
Yeah, I messed up the bump, and I was lucky, man. I had muscle, man. This is when it
well,
broke. When it broke, everything went like that. They got super tight.
well, I mean, it's a miracle you're alive, but thankfully for that. I know that it was 22 years ago this past weekend that you wrestled Kevin Sullivan. You were the 3PW heavyweight championship. I know he meant so much to you as well. And talk to me about Kevin Sullivan and what he meant to you.
He was like a father to me. Okay, I met him in 88, 89. I went to Myrtle. I went to Daytona Beach, Florida for spring break. Me and like 4 other guys. We had like 6 guys, all
Hmm.
of us, my crew. And we were like, you know, we get up and we work out, some of us, and then we party all the rest of the day and night. So we go to the gym, me and my one boy. The other guys, they're not even lifting; they're just drinking. So, and we started hanging out, and Next thing you know, I see Kevin Sullivan in the gym. So I was always told, go up and say hello. So I walk up to him. I said, "Pleasure to meet you. I'm Gary Wolf. I know you're Kevin Sullivan. You're in that,
Yeah, which
NWA.
you
Or
spoke
I don't
about
know
a few
what
minutes ago.
company. He was thinking he was probably Florida Championship Wrestling. He was doing his Dungeon of Doom or something. He was doing,
Yep.
uh, but he's like, "So you're in the business?" I said, "Yeah, I just started school. I go to the Monster Factory, And he was like, "Oh, okay." And he was just like, "Nice to meet you." And woman was in there working out with him, Nancy.
Yeah, I
That was
know
his
she
wife
was.
at the time. And so I remember afterwards, he came up to me and my boy and said, "Yo, what are you guys doing when you're done, working out?" We're like, "Oh, we're gonna probably go meet some people that and hang out and start getting fucked up." He's like, "Nah, why don't you come to my house and have dinner?" I'm like, "No shit." So we went. He goes, on the beach. It was the only tower on Daytona Beach at the time. There was only one tower on the beach, and he was living on the top floor, Kevin Sullivan.
Wow.
And
Wow.
yeah, it wasn't even built up yet.
Wow.
And
Okay. Okay.
okay, it was crazy. So we went in there. The doorman let us in, and he came down, met us, took us upstairs, and we hung out, partied with him, ate dinner, and in the meantime, he's a booker, so he's running back and forth to the bedroom. He's probably partying his ass off, but I don't know. We were playing like, I didn't want him to think I was, a heavy partier or anything like that. You know what I mean? I'm trying to be cool, because I know he's an important person in the business.
Yeah.
You
Oh,
know,
yeah. I mean, listen, absolutely, no question.
he could hire me or fire me. He's one of them guys. So, but somebody opening their house, just opening the house to me and my boy, not thinking twice about it. We're two big got monsters. I mean, my boy was a monster and I was big, man. I was big. And
Oh, I mean, it goes back to what you said here is that you were in the right place at the right time. And there's no question going and looking at your career, you've done those things. And we have a few more minutes, of course, with the legendary Gary Wolf, the Pitbull #1, a man that has certainly done so much. He's got a brand new book. It is the Pitbull Unleashed, the Gary Wolf story. Please go out there and buy it. It is on Amazon now. And I want to thank everybody that has led us to get to an opportunity to speak with the people like Gary Wolf and Rhino and Savio Vega, because really it's all the wrestlers, all the wrestling companies that have come on here. And a guy like me, a kid that grew up on 422 78th Street, basically just a few miles away from Gary Wolf wrestled. And I watched him on MSG's Madison Square Garden Network, Channel 11. And here we are today, all those years later, and I want to thank everybody so much for supporting this platform. And really, it is truly the only platform where you get to hear people like Gary Wolf, the Independents, everybody else that's out there. But I have something for you. I promised I had something for you. I know that you're in one Hall of Fame already. If you ask me, you should be in the WWE Hall of Fame. But I'm going to do this here because for those that are listening and watching in prime time on the brightest lights, you are now in the Sportzwire Radio Hall of Fame. So congratulations. It's the same Hall of Fame that Savio Vega is in. I have a college basketball player who played in the NCAA Final Four in it. We have the heavy metal bands Great White, Zebra, Kicks are in the Hall of Fame. And you've joined this Hall of Fame. And Mr. Wolf, I can't thank you enough so much for all that you do for our sport. And I wanted to honor you because it's only a matter of time before the WWE finally smartens up and puts the ECW and puts you guys in the Hall of Fame. But I want to go first and do it because you should be in the Hall of Fame for mine. And congratulations. I'll give you the physical copy, sir, when we're off the air.
thank you. I appreciate it, brother. I do.
I did want
Definitely.
to ask you. I know you're a very busy man. You've got a lot of interviews to do for the book, a lot of different things coming out. But I did want to ask you, in if with a few more minutes with you, Shane Douglas is kind of the one wrestler I kind of feel like is synonymous with your career. And why is it that Shane Douglas, you and him have just been synonymous to even where you guys just teamed together? And what made you and him such a yin yang throughout your career?
Well, I mean, I broke my neck with him, and the company didn't want to do the angle. You know, when I first brought it up to Todd Gordon, he was like, "Hell no," you know. And seriously, and Paul Heyman was like, "Hell no," and I'm like, you don't. I had to like sell it to them. You know, I had literally had to like say, "Listen, guys, you don't understand. I have a shoot broken neck. I mean, this halo is in my skull. It's for real. Okay? Imagine Shane Douglas in front of a swimming pool cutting a promo saying he wants to race me. Oh, that's right. I can't race you. You're crippled. You're handicapped. You can't even feed yourself. You're a halo. You know what I mean? It's like, they were looking at me going, no, I mean, people are going to freak out if they see that on TV. And I'm like, that's the idea. You know what I'm saying? And deep down inside, they knew it was going to get over, but they didn't know how much, and they were afraid how high it was going to get over. That's how I look at it. Because if you remember correctly, they were building Sabu versus Taz for
Yeah,
3 years.
yeah. I
Three,
actually remember watching that on VHS. Actually, it's funny you said that. That
yeah,
was one of the matches. My friend at the time in school, I bought that on VHS. It was Sabu and Taz. I remember it like they built
yeah,
that up on TV for like
three
way,
years.
way. Yeah, I
And
remember it very
our
well.
and the angle was me and Shane Douglas when I came back. When Rick Rude announced me, and I came back to the ring, I had Ravishing Rick Rude announce me to come back in the ring, which was an honor. Okay, and the roof came off that building, bro. Okay, I think we had a better angle with him breaking my neck and doing that whole gimmick we did. I think it surpassed. I mean, I'm not saying that Taz and Sabu's match wasn't right, but it was like our angle. I thought we should have been on the pay per view. That's what I thought.
Yeah, I think people were waiting for that payoff. I think that the build, the personal animosity, everything you went through, I think that there was that people were waiting for the finish, and it's kind of disappointing with that, but nevertheless, you still continue to be synonymous with Shane Douglas and Terry Funk. You wrestled Terry Funk, obviously. You were the 3PW champion. I mean, I have to ask you about the Funkster. I mean, a man that, I mean, really, he is on not only my Mount Rushmore, but a lot of wrestlers' Mount Rushmores. And what was Terry like?
I met him. I met him when I was going to the Monster Factory
Wow.
because
Wow.
Larry Sharp had a show in Camden, New Jersey, at the waterfront.
I know
And
Cam. I know that. I know who that is actually. I know Camden very
okay, he
well.
had two trailers, and most of the boys were in one trailer, and then another trailer was Stan Hansen and Terry Funk, me and Anthony, because Larry was our manager. So we were getting the push at that point at the Monster Factory. We were the top dogs at the school at that time. So Larry, he wants us to learn. I'm in the same locker room as Terry Funk. I'm like 19 years old, you know. And I'm looking at Stan Hansen, and he's mean as fuck, you know what I mean? And they're going to work each other. They had an unbelievable match where they're suplexing each other in the water, and I couldn't believe it. And I told them, I was like, Terry, would you look at our match? Tell us what you think. And believe me, it was the shits. It was horrible. We were so green, but I remember running into him again in ECW. He was coming out of the curtain into the back, and he saw me, and he remembered me. And we're going now. I don't know, maybe 5 years later. Who knows? You know what I mean? 4
Yeah,
years
yeah.
later, and
I'm
he
not going
looked
to
at me
ask.
and he goes, "Yeah." He's like, "Oh, I remember you. What's up? What's up? You're still in it." And Terry was really, really nice guy, man.
Oh, I
Really.
mean, and another guy, wins the ECW World Championship, and a man that so many careers he was so influential to, and I'm sure he's going to be a part of the book. And everybody has to go out there. I'll put the link up one more time for it. Please go out and buy this book. I can't stress enough about this book. You have to get it. I am so excited to read this book here, but I know I have so many more questions for you, but we're all going to read about them in the book. But before I let you go, you did bring up the Monster Monster Factory. And the Monster Factory was kind of like the place. I mean, being here locally, I remember hearing all the time. I would watch WWF and WCW. They talk about Bam Bam Bigelow, the Beast from the East, from the Monster Factory. You know, the Godfather, Papa Shango, Kama. He was from the Monster Factory. You guys were part of the Monster Factory years later. Damian Priest, Matt Riddle were part of the Monster Factory. The Headbangers. I mean, what made the Monster Factory this place where just so many people came out of and had all this success?
Because Larry Sharp was on top at one time, and he was tight with like Cowboy Bob Orton. He was tight with Gorilla Monsoon because they were from New Jersey, uh, and they would pop into school. So Vince decided, hey Larry, I'll start paying you and put you on the salary, but if you have good wrestlers, I want you to send them my way, and that's what he would
Wow.
do. So Larry would either we would go to Japan or we would go right to Vince. You know what I'm saying? But normally, like Vince, if he liked you, he would get you. Like he sent us to Charlotte, North Carolina, to work for South Atlantic Pro Wrestling, and we got the tag belts there. And at that time, the Nasty Boys were not even there yet. They ended up coming later. Uh, like I said, the Hardys didn't even come through there yet. You know what I mean? When we left and we were out of there, that's when they came through. So I mean, we could have been working for Vince a long time ago.
Yeah, I feel like that the Hardys, the Dudleys, that they in a way like took your spot. I feel like looking at your career, like it is kind of unfortunate in some ways that you didn't get that WWF, WWE run because your career, it's like to me it's so fascinating because you've been to Australia, had success, New Zealand, Japan, certainly the early days of ECW, then ECW. I mean, you look at what you've done in your career, it kind of like almost it's an under the radar kind of career. It's an underappreciated career. And I mean, I know you did get a run with the Public Enemy, the Eliminators, and ECW, but I mean, I feel like that, yeah, you should have been up there with the likes of the Hardys, the Nasties, the Dudleys, the Road Warriors, LOD. I mean, because I feel like your career, just from what you guys did, I'm sure the book will talk a lot about that. Let me ask you two more questions. My next to last question is, you were number 80 in the PWI 500 in 1996. You were also, I think, number 2 for Match of the Year in 1995 in the PWI 500. I never hear people ask you about the PWI 500. Growing up, and I said this to Rhino, as a kid, how I would research wrestling and learn about it was I would go to a newsstand on 5th Avenue and 76th Street in Brooklyn. I would buy Pro Wrestling Illustrated. I would look it up from front to back. And the PWI 500 was the Bible, I think, for any wrestler. And did it ever mean anything to you to be ranked number 80 in 96 and have the second best ranked match by the PWI 500 in 1995, right behind Shawn Michaels and Razor Ramon? And I mean, did that ever stuff mean anything to you?
No, the fact I particularly think that PWI 500 is bullshit. I think I know the guy that does it,
Yeah.
and I'm gonna be honest with you. He just doesn't like the pit bulls. You know what I mean? Uh,
You should have been ranked higher, but to some people I have on here, Rhino was like, yeah, you're the only person to have asked me that in any interview I've done. It meant something. I had Savio Vega on, who I think was just ranked a little higher than you. It meant
when
something.
I was going to Japan, he was TNT.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, yes, yes. I spoke
Okay.
about that.
So
Yeah,
no,
yeah.
that PWI, I think Quackenbush.
Mike Quackenbush. Yeah, he
I
was the
think he
one that
does
did it.
it.
Yeah, Mike Quackenbush. Yeah, well,
Yeah.
all right. Well, I mean, fair enough. Okay, my last question is before we put the plug up here, but in your career, is there one or two moments that stand out most?
That match in '95 was it was crazy.
Oh, yeah.
When I watch it, I don't know how I remember. Uh, Also, getting in the ring, working with the guys in the '80s in WWF.
Yeah, I
The
mean, your
Heart
career, I mean,
Foundation, the Rougeau brothers. I've been in the Big Boss
Barry
Man.
Windham,
Yeah,
DiBiase, you were in the ring
yeah,
with. I mean,
yeah.
like,
Yeah,
Wow. I mean, I feel like that the average fan would go, okay, yeah, I know him from ECW. I know the incident with the Halo, and maybe I know some of the stuff with the Eliminators, but I feel like your run is just so fascinating because you had the run with the Nasties. You were in there with the
every
Sheep Herders. I mean, just so many different people you wrestled.
every tag team you could think of.
Yeah,
And
I
then
mean,
they would,
it's
and then they
almost
would,
like
then they would split us up and have us wrestle singles against the guys. To us, we were just learning. We were it was he was paying us $150 a night, taking
you were
care
in
of
there
our
with the
food.
Steiners, even. I'm pretty sure
Yeah.
a few times. I
Yes.
mean, you were in there with them. I mean, like your career, just who you were in there with. It's just like, I mean, the Samoans you were in there with. I mean, like I look at
Many
your,
times. Many
yeah. I
times.
mean, and Savio is very tight with them. Savvy and I spoke about that on and off the air. I mean, he's somebody I have a very good relationship with, and they're so influential. And I think your career, you were almost like a good hand. You were one of those guys they call as a good hand because look at what you accomplished and where you wrestled. You were a good hand, and I think that the average
You
fan
know
should
who
go back
made
and look that
made
up.
who made that possible was Kevin Sullivan, because we would give him
God rest
he
his
would
soul.
call us and say, send me a tape. And what he would do is he sent that tape to one person named King Curtis in Hawaii. King
Wow.
Curtis had that tape, and when he saw the tape, that's when he fell in love with us. I mean, he was the man. He's like, I love you guys. And Don Morocco went over there, and he watched the tape, and that's how we started going to those tours in New Zealand. You know what I
Wow.
mean? It
Yeah,
was
I mean,
because of that. And
amazing.
and
Just
then when the British Bulldogs came back to tour, they go back and work for Vince, and Vince and the boys say, "How was your trip and how did it go?" And they're going to tell them. They talk.
yeah.
Wrestlers talk. So
Oh,
instead of them,
absolutely. Listen, it's
so
the
instead
word
of them
travel.
saying, hey, those guys, the Pitbulls, they fucking suck, man. Fucking stay away from them. They actually put us over, and there you go. That's how our reputation got good. And the Samoans would always, I mean, promoters back in the day would ask the Samoans, who do you want to wrestle? And they would say, bring in the Pitbulls. We want to wrestle the
Yeah.
Pitbulls on independence. So that's how, when we were, working out at the Monster Factory, learning the business, and, we started getting work, and, we were getting better. And, that's when I remember, man, Cowboy Bob Orton came down, and he was sitting in the office with Larry Sharp, and I remember him leaving, saying goodbye, and next thing I know, Larry was like, "Come on, get in the office. I want to talk to you guys." And I was like, "Okay, what's up?" He's like,
Oh,
"All right, you got two choices: Portland, Oregon, or North Carolina. I got you a job. You're gonna wrestle 6 nights a week, make $75 a night. Each of
well,
you will make 75, so 150 a night ain't bad."
you know what? That's definitely not bad. And these are some of the stories you're going to see in the
Yeah,
Pitbull Unleashed, the Gary Wolf story. Please go out there and buy this book. I can assure you, it's going to be one. It's going to be one of my favorite books ever to read, and to honor to be able to speak with this man. And definitely, you'll see more of it. Go check it out. I want to give you the floor. I want to give you some closing thoughts. I know you're a busy man. You've got a lot to talk about with this book. Number 26, by the way, of all wrestling books right now on Amazon. It is moving up the charts. Hopefully, it hits number one. And I will pass the floor to you for any closing thoughts. Anything else, sir? Take it away.
yeah, man. You could check out my Facebook page, Gary Wolf. You'll see Wrestling Legends, big cartoon picture of it, and you'll know that's mine. Uh, my Gmail is pitbull67gw@gmail.com. Any promoters want me to come out?
I
I'll do
actually am friends
signings.
with a few of them. Well, actually, I'll share your Facebook. I'm friends with actually one where Savio wrestled. So actually,
Oh
uh,
yeah, I still
I'll,
wrestle. I can still wrestle. Just I can still hang with the 20-year-olds, man. It's not a problem.
oh, I'll
Uh,
I'll
and I,
be I'll be for sure. I actually will send your info to two friends of mine out west. I will actually do
yeah,
that. So I'll do that.
yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
I'll
And
do it.
definitely go out
You can go to Walmart, online, Amazon,
Amazon's
Prime.
$25. That's it. It's $25. That's it. For $25, you can
Yeah,
see. I think
Barnes and Noble are selling it. I don't know how many wrestling books are out there. How many wrestling books are out there?
there's a lot, but right now, currently, this one, like I said, is number 26 on the charts, which is a pretty big deal because you're right up there with Becky Lynch. You're right up there with Ric Flair's book, Bret Hart's book, and your book is selling as well as their books. I think that's going to show. And I think after this, and even I'm going to make a prediction before I let you go. This book is going to be basically the equivalent of Motley Crue's The Dirt. When I was a kid, I read that from front to back, Motley Crue's The Dirt. This book is going to be like that ECW version. I am so
Just
excited.
like I am. I'm Pitbull #1, baby, from ECW, the original daddy. #1. Uno. That's why you got to go buy it. I want to be #1. I want to be #1, man.
I'm going to do my best to make that happen. ECW, baby. This is the newest member of the Sportswire Radio Hall of Fame. You can add author to his name. He is the legendary Pitbull #1, Gary Wolf, of course, former ECW television and tag team champion. The legendary Pitbull is one of the greatest tag teams. You can still see him out there wrestle. If you're a promoter out there, we'll definitely get you in touch with this man. His book is out now on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. Check him out on Facebook. And I want to thank all the wrestlers, everybody that made this possible. It's all of you, every subscriber, every follower. I fought tooth and nail to get here, and a kid from Brooklyn grew up on 422 78th Street to get an opportunity to talk with a man that I watched on the Madison Square Garden Network. I watched him all throughout my childhood. Now I get a chance to speak with him. Sir, thank you so much for all that you do for our sport. God bless you. I can't wait to see you soon, and thank you for the opportunity, and can't wait to read the book.
Thank you. Peace out, man.
That's it. That is Gary Wolf, the legendary Pitbull #1, who's got a book, like I said, Pitbull Unleashed, Gary Wolf. Please go out there and buy it. Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. My name is the Reverend Tom Brice, your voice, figuratively and literally, where all music and wrestling matters. What a week it's been on Sportswire Radio. First, we're featured on blabbermouth.net, the heavy metal version of Rolling Stone. Only 1 million readers for my interview with great white guitarist Mark Kendall. Now we get on ECW legend, the one and only Pitbull Gary Wolf. Next stop, I don't know, maybe the big time. But until then, hit the sub button for us. Follow Gary on Facebook. Buy the book. Like, share, and subscribe to this. And share it. Tell your friends. Sportswire Radio is the only platform where you get things like this. But until then, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. On the #1 global radio station that is Sportswire Radio, where all music and wrestling matters. Thank you so much. Have a great night, everybody.